It was meant to be the start of a new life, a chance to escape the past, to build a future, to finally breathe freely. But for so many, the first taste of this new world was not freedom, but confinement. The destination stood like a silent gatekeeper between them and their dreams. After endless weeks at sea, exhausted passengers were not embraced, but herded. Families were torn apart, voices thick with worry, as they were prodded and examined, their fate resting in the hands of strangers. The air stung with the sharp bite of disinfectant, barely masking the underlying scent of sickness and death. The narrow beds lined up like gravestones, each carrying the weight of those who had come before, some who had walked out into their new lives and others who never left at all. But there was hope past the cliffs where the ocean still roared. But here, inside these walls, time stretched, in a place where disease did not care for class, hope or desperation. Welcome to If These Trees Could Talk.
It is an absolute honour to be recording on site on Karangal land today, saltwater country. We are at Q Station, and I would like to acknowledge that although it may be inhabited by some spirits of the last few centuries, that this land is originally Aboriginal land, and I'd like to acknowledge the history of tens of thousands of years of this land, as well as the history that we look into in this episode. I'd like to acknowledge all Aboriginal people, past, present and emerging, especially those listening to the recording today. Thank you for continuing to share your culture.
I was incredibly aware that I had my back to a doorway and I felt exceptionally uncomfortable about it.
Use the energy in the room, Sam, and open the cupboard door.
Oh my goodness.
Holy
No
Jesus.
way, man.
It far exceeded all of my expectations.
Hello, good morning.
Good morning. This is weird, recording in the morning.
It is. We've had our coffee.
Do you get to tell everyone about your birthday surprise today?
It's a really special episode for me. As I was just listening to your introduction then, it's the first time I've listened to an introduction where I've really known the content of what's coming forward. And I was like, oh, I'm excited about where you're taking today's episode and what my role might be.
Well, your role is just to talk about your own experience, because this was the whole point of this, was for you to have this experience and not just me to tell people what stuff's like.
And our listeners can have this experience too. As you would have noticed from the acknowledgement to country, we have some recordings from on site today. I haven't listened to our recording, so this is going to be fun for me, but are we going to need a little bit of a language warning here, Shannon? Because from memory, there were some times where I got a little bit passionate.
No, not in the parts that I've put down here to be included.
Right.
I think it'll be okay.
My mum will be happy with that.
Yeah, she will. We probably should introduce our friend Coz first, who is our special support person, because I was worried how all of this was going to play out. So you will hear from our friend Coz during this, and she was our most sensible friend.
She was a great support person.
She was.
And I feel like on the spectrum of how we feel about ghosts, there is Coz at one end and Shannon at the other end. So to be in the middle of that, hearing both perspectives, was a really great space for me to be in.
It was a fun way to do it, to have somebody who completely believes in ghosts, someone who was on the fence, and someone who was like, I'm going to disprove every single thing that happens here, like a complete skeptic. It was a really lovely way to have that experience, and I've never had that before, because whenever I've done paranormal stuff with friends, it's usually people who are as into it as I am. So I was a little bit anxious taking you guys there because I was like, oh, what if they hate it? What if it's terrible? But then we drove in, and even if you're not there for the paranormal stuff,
Oh my goodness. So beautiful.
unbelievably beautiful. You could just go there for a day or a weekend and not be interested in history and not be interested in paranormal and take nothing about what this place was in its previous lives and just have a full immersive nature experience there. So before we go into our experiences, I will tell you just a little bit about the quarantine station at North Head, which is just near Manly on the north side of the harbour, has a long and complex history encompassing Indigenous significance, colonial public health measures, and its evolution into a modern day heritage site. North Head has been a place of both healing and isolation for centuries. Long before European arrival, Sydney Harbour was home to the people of the Eora and Darug nations. It was a site of spiritual significance used for medicine, healing, ceremonies, and burials. The headland's connection to Indigenous medicine, healing, death, and transition held deep cultural meaning, making its later use as a quarantine station an eerie parallel to its Indigenous past. The arrival of British settlers and the establishment of the quarantine facilities disrupted Indigenous lands use and displaced the local people, contributing to broader devastation of Aboriginal communities due to introduced disease and dispossession. With Sydney growing as a major colonial port, the threat of infectious diseases arriving on immigrant ships became a serious concern. In response, the New South Wales government established the quarantine station in 1832, selecting North Head for its isolation and natural barriers. The first recorded quarantine case involved passengers aboard the ship Buxton, detained due to an outbreak of smallpox. Initially, the station was rudimentary, with passengers housed in tents or makeshift shelters. Over the following decades, permanent structures were built, including hospitals, kitchens, accommodation for both patients and staff. Many early quarantine passengers were Irish, English, and Chinese immigrants who had endured months-long sea voyages under very poor sanitary conditions. Throughout the 19th century, the station expanded significantly. New facilities were constructed, including fumigation rooms, bathing areas, and a cemetery for those who had perished. Disease outbreaks such as the bubonic plague, typhus, smallpox, and influenza saw thousands of passengers detained at the station, often under harsh and isolated conditions. During this period, quarantine measures were often strict, with passengers forced to undergo fumigation treatments with carbolic acid, compulsory bathing in seawater, and strict medical inspections. Many people died in isolation, with close to 600 deaths reported. However, it's possible, due to poor early records, that it could be many, many more. I think she said on the night 2000. So with advances in medical science, including the introduction of vaccines and improved sanitation, the need for a large-scale quarantine station began to decline. However, the station remained active through World War I and the Spanish flu pandemic, when returning soldiers were quarantined to prevent the disease from spreading into Sydney. During World War II, the site was repurposed for military use, hosting interned enemy aliens and later serving as a training ground for military personnel. The station saw its final major quarantines in the 1950s and 60s, with arrivals from Europe and Asia being detained to prevent the spread of tuberculosis. By 1970s, quarantine was no longer seen as a primary defence against infectious diseases, leading to the site's decommissioning. The station officially closed in 1984, marking the end of over 150 years of operation.
Cos and I were surprised by the coincidence of the Spanish flu pandemic being in 1919. Exactly 100 years before COVID.
Yeah. And you asked me several times while we were there, and I know because I've listened to the audio lots, did we do any better this time around? And what was it like, and how did they do it there? And I'm going to do another episode that's going to tie into this, and it will be our next episode where we talk about the bubonic plague and its introduction to the colonies in Sydney and what they did and how they worked out how to manage it, and then you can make those decisions for yourself. So I've done some research based on your questions, So, yeah, that'll be our next episode.
So that'll be out next fortnight.
Yes.
Excellent.
Yeah. I knew nothing about the plague. So,
Well, we knew nothing about smallpox until we saw the photos on the wall.
yeah, let's talk about smallpox then, which Megan did make a joke while we were down there about they're just small. It doesn't matter. Like,
Oh, they were not small.
here you go. This is just a refresher.
Yeah, thank you for that. I appreciate that. Can I turn it upside down now?
You can tell people what it looks like.
I don't need to look at this photo anymore. They're not small.
No. It's pretty difficult to look at that image when it's a child, especially considering he's placed like he's about to be put in a coffin. I picked that on purpose. I actually had to unfilter that because Google gave me a warning that it might be a disturbing picture.
Wow. And it is quite disturbing to be watching your loved ones suffer through that. Yeah. I'm going to turn it upside down now. Thank you.
So smallpox is caused by a virus. The symptoms include high fever, body aches, characteristic rash that develops into pus-filled sores, which is what that image is, and I'll include that image in the show notes so people can be as disturbed as you are.
If you want, you don't have to. Just trigger warning.
Yeah. Smallpox is highly contagious and often fatal. It causes severe scarring and blindness. When you're reading stories about historical stuff, especially with convicts, because they used to record like their physical appearance. So if they had a tattoo or a scar or something like that, and lots of people in that historical record, when you're looking, which clearly I research a lot of old shit, it'll often say smallpox markings or scars as a little thing in their physical description, because the scarring, if you did survive, was pretty severe, and if it was left untreated and it was a really bad case, it could actually make you go blind.
So there is a treatment?
There is now, and I think some people survived it at the time because there are a lot of people in the historical records with smallpox scarring. So I don't know what they used to treat it back then, but yes, some people did survive. Not everybody who got it died. Mm-hmm. Another big one was the bubonic plague, and I have another picture for you, Megan.
Oh, great. Thank you.
Well, there's two.
I love that you've printed them too.
This is the reason that they call it
on real paper.
On real paper, so people could hear me handing them to you.
God, what is that?
So this is why they called it the Black Death. These, I think they're called buboes. So the bubonic plague is caused by bacteria, which is transmitted from fleas that are on rats. So the rats would get infected with the bacteria, and then the fleas would feed on the blood of the rats and then jump onto people. And I know a lot about this because I'm currently researching it.
Shannon, is this necessary?
It is, because you need to know what these people would.
It's bad. It's bad. You don't need to see the pictures if you don't want to. Just trust me that it's bad.
So bubonic plague would cause fever, chills. It come on very quickly. So from when the people would get their first symptoms, they would decline rapidly. And outside of the fever and chills, your lymph nodes would swell, which is what that second image is. And it would often be in the groin. So, you know, when you get an infection now and you can feel sometimes like the glands in your neck swell up a little bit. Well, these would swell like sometimes to the sides of eggs.
I saw the picture. Thank you.
Yeah. And they could sometimes burst, which would obviously get infected, and then people would end up with sepsis and stuff like that. So there was a lot of complications that could come from it, but then the skin would start to die as well, and that's what would give the black. Well, I think it was the whole flesh, like feet, hands, if the glands swelled and busted. Necrosis, is that what it's called? Anyway, it's real yuck. It's not good.
I would publicly like to thank the immunisation process.
Yeah. I'm going to tell you a bit more about the immunisation process in the next episode for the bubonic plague. There's some stuff there. It's cool. This disease did have a high mortality rate, because it onset so fast. Worldwide, it was a massive thing. In Australia, we did a pretty good job with the bubonic plague, but I won't go into it now. But the quarantine station did play a huge role in how successful Australia was with our management of the bubonic plague. So Spanish influenza was another big one, and the biggest outbreak was between 1918 and 1919 when people were returning from the war. It's caused by the influenza A virus. Symptoms include fever, chills, fatigue, severe body aches, pneumonia, and often rapid death. And it affected up to 1/3 of the global population. So if we put it in context with COVID, it was as a big of a thing then as probably bigger than what COVID was for us. Yeah, affected 1/3 of the global population, killing millions, including over 12,000 Australians. Typhus is caused by a bacteria, which is also transmitted by lice. Symptoms include high fever, severe headaches, rash, muscle pain, and delirium. Without treatment, typhus had a high fatality rate, particularly in overcrowded and unsanitary conditions. So you can understand why on a ship that this would run rampant. And if there was typhus on a ship, it would generally lead to mass quarantines. Like everybody would have to come in and stay at the quarantine station if even one person was found to have it on a ship. Cholera is another one, which is caused by bacteria, and it was typically spread through contaminated food and water. Symptoms include severe diarrhea, dehydration, vomiting, and rapid deterioration. Cholera could kill within hours if it was untreated, making it one of the most feared diseases among colonial officials. They needed to be sure that people didn't have cholera. Or, again, if things are coming in off ships, if there's barrels of water and that because when you go to sea, you have to take the water in barrels in those days. So if the water was infected and then that got brought ashore and it was used or whatever, like it could be huge for the community. Typhoid is another one, which is again caused by bacteria spread through contaminated food and water. It caused prolonged fevers, weakness, abdominal pain, constipation or diarrhea, and in severe cases, intestinal perforation, which is where your intestines would tear. Yeah, it was life-threatening if untreated, but vaccines and antibiotics later reduced its impact significantly. Measles was another one, which there was still measles when we were kids. People caught measles, but you don't hear about people getting measles anymore. Another for vaccination. Symptoms included high fever, cough, runny nose, red eyes, and a distinctive rash. It is highly contagious, being transmitted from person to person, and often cause severe complications such as pneumonia or encephalitis. Outbreaks on immigrant ships frequently led to entire shiploads of passengers being quarantined to prevent measles from spreading into the wider community. And then we get down to the ones that really affected the kids. Smallpox was big for kids too, but scarlet fever was terrible for little people. Again, caused by bacteria. Symptoms include high fever, sore throat, rash, and a red strawberry tongue. Though it's not as deadly as some of the other diseases, again, highly, highly contagious, especially to people in confined spaces, and it could lead to severe complications like rheumatic fever. This was one that could take out lots of kids on a whole ship, like a whole shipload of children could die if scarlet fever broke out. And the last one on my list is diphtheria, again caused by bacteria. The symptoms include sore throat, fever, difficulty breathing due to a thick grey membrane forming in the throat. This was also highly fatal in children before vaccines, as it could cause suffocation or heart failure. So there's the fun stuff. We've got that over and done with, Megan.
Thank you. What percentage of ships would need to be quarantined? How often was this happening?
I think it was quite a few, and a lot of it had to do with the sanitary conditions on the ship. And as time went on and they realised this was a big thing and a lot of people were dying, the government put in stricter measures around what provisions the ships had to provide. So Cos made us a lovely salad when we went, and we called it the scurvy prevention salad.
It's delicious.
Because I'd packed cheese and salamis and nothing that was healthy. But these guys would be on ships with really poor diets. They could be at sea for months and months at a time. Their access to fresh fruit and vegetables was obviously impossible. So there was a lot of preserved stuff, salted meat, that kind of stuff, when they could get meat. So not only were the conditions rough and there was lots of people packed in, it wasn't kept clean, but they also had really poor diets. Their immune systems would be down. They would be stressed because they're at sea and there's, it's dangerous and you're there for a long time.
Did they make their passengers wash their hands for the length of the happy birthday song?
They did not make their passengers wash their
that might have
hands
helped.
for the length of the happy birthday song. I don't even know whether hand washing would have been a thing because the water that you had available would be for drinking because you can only store so much. And it wasn't uncommon for people to run out of drinking water on ships. So the three of us packed up the car and headed down on a lovely Saturday afternoon. The weather was beautiful. It was perfect. It couldn't have been better. I had looked at a lot of stuff online before we went, and I kind of had this idea in my head of what this place was going to look like. And once we arrived, it just completely blew my expectations to pieces because it was so stunning. Even the buildings, I expected this really cold, horrible, stark place. But the buildings are beautiful.
You tell me that the land is now owned by national parks.
Yes.
But it is leased from the hotel company and that's how it's looked after?
I think so. So from what I understand, National Parks took it over years ago and they ran some ghost tours to fund the restoration of some of the buildings. And it was really popular, but it's obviously hugely expensive. There's a lot of buildings there. You're not just going in and it's like a hospital with a little kitchen off to the side and somewhere where other people slept. There are masses and masses of buildings. We didn't even get through, I would say, a quarter of the buildings on site. One night is not enough. If you are going to stay at this place, book a couple of nights because if you want to fully explore, you definitely need more than just 24 hours.
We didn't get the chance to do the history tour, which would have been great as well.
Yeah, but that just means we'll have to go back another time.
Let's go back.
I was expecting it to be concretey and harsh and it wasn't. It was beautiful. And we all said at different parts, if I got dropped off here on a ship, I wouldn't be mad about it.
Yeah.
It was stunning and the buildings all looked out over the harbour.
Yeah.
People would kill for that land to build their house on. The little beach section is great because it's got little cafes and there's a little museum down there. So you could go and fill up a whole day just wandering around and swimming at the beach and having coffee and those types of things.
So if you're sitting on the cos end of the ghost spectrum, then don't think that this is not for you.
Oh no, it's everything. It's history, it's nature, it's national parks, it's wildlife,
Marine.
One of my favourite parts of it was just sitting there having our coffee, watching them crazy people in those boats.
Oh, sailing. Yeah, it was pretty windy.
People think we're crazy for going on a ghost tour. Those people out there on them yachts that are nearly tipping over in the spinnaker, that man next to us told me that it was called the spinnaker, that front thing, and them nearly blowing off and the boats going over on their sides and stuff. And I'm like, they're the crazy people.
So true.
So we have got a little bit of audio there. It's just a couple of seconds of when we arrived. So our first impressions of the place.
Here we are. Q station. Oh, it's so pretty.
I'm so excited.
Look at the view. Oh, look. It's the other side of Sydney.
I didn't expect Manly would be this pretty. I can see why everyone wants to live here. So once you arrive, you jump on the courtesy bus, which will take you all around all of the different precincts. We did that, got taken to our heritage quarters, which we found out later was the third class accommodation. I'm sorry, Megan, that I purchased you third class accommodation for your birthday price. Although I think they're pretty much all the same now. So we weren't living like paupers, and we were on the highest point, and we had a lovely breeze, which was really nice.
It was very nice.
So we decided that we would do a daytime walk and just go and have a bit of an explore.
We watched the sunset.
We watched the sunset. We had a beautiful picnic over near the isolation precinct, and the view was incredible.
It was.
So we had our anti-scurvy salad and some cheese and bickies and all delicious things, and just literally watched the sunset over the harbour, which was a really lovely way to just kind of end a lovely afternoon and then
Dun, dun, dun.
get ready for the spooky shit. There was, however, an incident that you had down by the wharf, which I would say was our first spooky experience for the day. It was enough for you to mention it to me because I've got the audio.
It was.
Okay, is this a ghost thing when I just like moved over to let somebody else in because I felt like there were four of us for a moment there and I felt like I was excluding someone back there?
It could be, yeah. It could be a ghost thing. This was daytime, afternoon. We were on a busy, busy wharf. There were people swimming in the water. There was lots of stuff going on. And then it was enough for you to mention it.
Yeah, I feel like if it happened outside of this space that was supposed to be spooky or, at home or just walking down the main street, I would have just went, ugh, you idiot. But because we were there and I had that part of my brain open and ready, I was definitely inviting whatever experience was going to go my way. So I probably paid a lot more attention to it. Like it wasn't a scary thing.
No.
It was just, that was weird.
Yeah.
I'm sure I said this to you many times on that weekend. I'm not a believer. I'm for anything, any concept that's thrown my way. I'm open to anything. And I really wanted to be fully immersed in this experience on this weekend.
I love that you went in with that mindset. It really improved my experience too, because I was so anxious that if we got there and it was scary, because a lot of the stuff that I'd listened to prior to us going talked about these big angry spirits that live in this place. And I was like, what if we get there and it's terrifying and then they can't sleep? And it wasn't that
I wasn't
at
scared.
all. And there are scary bits.
I'm sure that you've got audio to prove that I was a little bit scared at one point.
I do, yeah. Yep. I've just got that smiggled away over here.
Okay, stay tuned. Way to keep the audience hanging on.
So we recorded a pre-tour and post-tour reflection. We will put these in and you'll be able to hear them if the audio is a little bit different. Obviously, we didn't record it in the studio, but the acoustics in that room were quite good.
Oh, yeah, nice.
Yeah.
It was probably like acoustic cushion with all the spirits around the room laughing at us.
Just before we head out for our ghost tour, I want to get everybody's feelings and then we'll be able to check in later and see how we feel afterwards. I felt very nervous before I left this afternoon, mostly because I'm a ghosty girl and I've brought the most two sensible people that I know to have ghosty experiences.
That was a high five because we didn't know we were considered the most sensible people you knew.
That's not true. You don't believe that.
No, I really do believe that. That's a nervous laugh. No, it's a nervous laugh. I was very concerned about how they would handle this. I don't want to just go on this tour and have like a whole heap of stories of what somebody else experienced there. I want time for us to just sit in this place that holds incredible history and a lot of tragedy and trauma, really, and be able to have just a tiny little space. Like I want some stories, but I want to have a tiny little bit of space for us to just sit there and kind of reflect on, while this place is insanely beautiful, that what brought it about was something really tragic. I'm more interested, though, in your feelings around what we're about to walk into, considering it's now dark outside and Megan just shit her pants walking up the trail from our sunset picnic because something moved on a rock. How are you feeling, Megan, about your birthday surprise?
I've already had the most wonderful day, and I've explained to you before in terms of what I believe. I'm always open to new things, and I don't not believe in anything I haven't seen with my own eyes. So then I'm open to everything. I'm very excited about any new adventure, and I'm very excited to be doing this alongside an experienced ghost nerd and somebody who is the most sensible person I know. Here she is. This is Cos, everybody, our support friend.
I am nervous but excited. I really am looking forward to giving this a go. Not something I've ever thought about, hey, let's go and do a ghost tour. But if I was going to do one, I do want to do it with Shannon. Similar to Megan, not sure I'm a believer because I've never really given it too much thought either. I'm excited. I'm excited to see whether we see anything, feel anything. Very open to either way of going, yes, they exist, or no, it's just theatrics and it's all made up just to make some money. I'm not sure either way, but I'm looking forward to figuring that out for myself. And I'm really glad that I also get to have the weekend away with you guys. You could have asked me to do anything this weekend and I would have went, yeah, sure.
So to give you a bit of a idea of where we are, we're probably at the highest point on the headland here in our rooms, and everything is downhill from here, which will be great walking to our starting point. Won't be so great walking up. We've already done a little bit of a walk around and had a look at a few spots so we could see them in the daylight. We're going to have to walk back up here by ourselves in the dark. We do have some torches.
There's things moving in the bushes.
They're not scared. They don't believe in ghosts. So we are about to head off now. We will put our sensible walking shoes on. We will put our wine down.
And our jeans. Make sure you've all got jeans.
We've got jeans on so Mr. Slimy doesn't grab us on the ankles. I think that's actually, if Mr. Slimy's going to grab you, you probably want him to grab you on your ankles. You don't want it to be anywhere else. There's a reason he has that name. So I'm going to step you through the rooms that we went into in the order that we went into them. So then when people listen to our post-tour reflection, they'll understand the different things that we mention in there. So the first one we went into was what I call the gas chamber.
Mm-hmm.
Do you want to give an explanation of what that building looked like?
It won't take long.
No.
4 walls, a door and 2 little sliding windows, tiny little holes in the wall where they used to pump in. Was it zinc?
Yeah. Zinc sulfite, maybe.
Which we know to be a carcinogen?
Yeah, it is now. Yep. We know that it is now. But the purpose was as a skin disinfectant, and because it was also breathed in, it would go into their lungs and dry out any respiratory illnesses, was what they said, what they thought at the time.
And that was first stop. Once you got off the ship, first stop, go in this room, which was stinking hot.
Stinking hot.
So hot. Pitch black. When they opened the door and you could see again, you'd be like, oh, there's a person next to me. I didn't know that person was there.
How did you feel when she closed the door?
Hot. So hot.
The backstory is that people in this space often see a shadow figure, a big, tall man, which she did explain to us when we were there. I didn't have any feelings in this room other than hot.
Yeah.
And that I wanted my back against the wall. I didn't see anything.
No.
I mean, I felt as spooked out as a normal person would feel being locked in a dark room where people had zinc sulfate pumped into their lungs. I tried to immerse myself in that and just imagine what it would feel like to be in there. It felt like a gas chamber. And I know people didn't die in there. However, the problematic part of this process was that when you put 40 people in that small space and then pump.
Oh, of course, going to do the
Warm-
complete opposite to
Yeah.
what is intended.
So-
but they were doing the best that they knew.
They were doing the best that they knew, because if someone was in there with smallpox, those 40 people were likely going to end up with smallpox.
Yeah.
And I don't think we understood at the time that often some of these diseases are most contagious just prior to when you start showing the symptoms. So they were trying.
We then went into the room where the luggage,
The autoclaves.
thank you, and they ran them through at a temperature.
It was at 102
And apparently if it was like 2 degrees,
higher, yeah.
then that actually would have been successful.
Yeah. So you can see that they were using science-backed studies to try and figure out ways to combat this stuff before they had any real hard evidence about disease control.
I see how we are combining history and paranormal into this one episode, and we've covered the history of those two areas now. Do you want to talk about your paranormal experience from the autoclaves?
Yes. We went into the autoclaves. Everybody sat down. There was a little ledge along the front and some people sat down there. You and Cos were on a trolley and I was sitting on a seat at the back of the room. It looks like a big warehouse, like when you kind of walk through, and at the front of it, there's like little train tracks that you sort of follow in. And at the front of it, there's these 2 big doors that open up, and that's where the trolleys would be pushed and then treated with this really hot steam.
I feel like we need to talk about the light as well. On the ghost tour, they don't use bright light. They don't want to scare anything away, and they want our eyes to work the best possible way. So there was a red light. She was using was it in the room or?
It was a red light on,
It was a
on
red
the
light.
ceiling.
I just remember the room being very red,
Yes.
dull red.
Yes, she started to talk to us about 2 spirits of kids that are often seen in this room. So there was a little boy who she talked about first, and then she talked about Marianne, who was a young girl who was often seen in a white dress with big, long, flowing, curly hair. I had heard a fair bit about Marianne before we went. So while we're sitting there and we're looking at these 2 big steamy things, and I'm looking down into the tunnels of these autoclaves, there was something on my right that my peripheral vision picked up. And so I immediately looked because I could see something moving, and I immediately looked and there was nothing there. So I just took my focus back to her, and she was explaining to us about Marianne and different people who had seen her in different spots around the room. And once my focus was back on her and I'd forgot about this movement that I thought I'd seen, a figure on my right, which I would say was a small female, I would say between 5 and 6. I couldn't make her out properly because I can't look directly at her. And this is my thing. I've had a couple experiences on different paranormal tours where I will pick up things in my peripheral vision, and in the minute that I look at them, they're not there. And I spoke to a lady who was a medium, and she told me, don't look directly at it. Just keep your eyes where they are and watch it in your peripheral vision. If it goes away, don't look at it, and you'll slowly build up the ability to be able to do it. I've never been able to build up the ability to be able to look directly at this thing. So I feel like it's not evidence because I can't tell you exactly what it looked like and all of its facial features.
But you knew it wasn't Marianne.
I knew it wasn't Marianne. She did not have long blonde curly hair, and she definitely had a pink dress on. It was a pink tunic.
Even though we were in a red room?
Well, this was the thing. So then I'm questioning it and I'm saying, is this Marianne? Because there's a red light. So would it make a white dress look pink? It wasn't a long dress. It was a knee-length tunic, and it reminds me of the smock tunic things we used to wear as school uniforms when we were in primary school. I don't know if you had them at your school. And the dress was the clearest thing to me. So I sat and looked at this lady who was telling me about this Marianne girl, and all I knew in my head was this was not Marianne. I started taking photos straight away of this area, thinking, I'm going to catch something because I can see something here and it's moving. I watched it walk from in line where the people were sitting over towards the wall, and there was a trolley, and she jumped up on the trolley and kind of turned around to face us, and then I couldn't see her anymore.
But later Cos found something in that exact spot in one of our photos.
In the exact spot.
If I wasn't on a ghost tour, would not have taken a second look at.
Straight away when I seen Cos's photo, I was like, that's just a shadow of somebody who's sitting there, And I went through all of my photos and there is no shadow in the same spot. And Cos has 2 shots, one with this image in it, a shadowy image, and one without. So we'll include that in the show notes and we'll probably pop it up on the socials and stuff too so you can have a little look at it.
The photo thing's interesting because they're useless to go back and look at now because I think because you're taking photos in the dark on my phone, you have to hold for, the aperture thing for a few seconds. So it could just be anything, any human moving in the room. Unless you look at it straight after, I don't think your photo evidence is really.
No, but this is clearly it's not an orb, it's not dust. This is a shadow that is there in one photo and not in any of the others.
Check that one out, but avoid the disease ones.
So we went from the autoclaves to the hospital precinct. When we went there in the afternoon, I had no feelings about the hospital and I thought I was going to have big feelings about the hospital because I'm scared of matrons.
And they did talk about the big personalities in there.
The big personalities in there. I've done a tour at Willow Court Asylum in Tasmania, which is an old mental asylum. And the matron at that place, I didn't see her, but she was a very big figure. So I was quite scared about the matron because a lot of the stories about Q Station were very similar. She likes a really orderly, well-run place.
Yeah,
you don't mess around.
You're told not sit on the beds and see if you want an experience because she doesn't like it when people sit on the beds.
She doesn't like it when people sit on the beds.
There was supposed to be kids in there, a cheeky kid who sometimes plays with shoelaces.
Yes, would pull your legs. I didn't have any of those feelings. But in the afternoon when we went there, we walked down and there was a group of buildings over to the left. And I said to you at the time, oh, that door's open. Do you think that's accommodation as well? Do you remember the little buildings that were off over to the left? I had some feelings about those rooms in the afternoon. They gave me the heebie-jeebies. I could have walked over and looked in there and I didn't. There was something about that area that I didn't like, but I was expecting to be terrified by the hospital and I wasn't at all. I felt quite welcome in there and I went straight in and laid on the bed.
You invited the matron in.
I did.
You did. You laid on the bed, not just sit.
With my shoes.
That's right. She didn't like the shoes on the bed.
She didn't like the shoes on the bed. So I laid on the bed and I felt quite welcome in there. I didn't feel scared at all until I sat in the wheelchair. Our guide had told us, and so this could be power of persuasion, that somebody had sat in that wheelchair and somebody took a photo of them sitting in there and she walked around and showed us the image of the ghost sort of figure standing behind them.
But to a skeptic, that's just a nighttime photo of somebody standing behind somebody else.
Yes, that's right. I sat in that wheelchair and immediately felt cold behind my back. And there was nowhere on this tour that you felt cold.
It was a hot day.
It was a friggin' hot day. And the buildings hold the warmth. So everywhere we went into was stifling.
Can you imagine suffering from those diseases in the middle of summer?
It would have been horrible. But I sat down there in that seat and I felt cold on my back. I turned around and I did realise that I was sitting in front of what I'm assuming is bifold doors. So in my audio I say, oh, it's just doors behind me. It's probably just a cool draft.
There were no cool drafts, Shannon.
There was no cool drafts anywhere. But I did get up pretty quickly and move from there. But I didn't notch that in my head at the time. It's only after I've come home and thought about it. Because in my head I was like, oh, yeah, there's a door there. I'm like, even outside there wasn't a cool breeze.
No. Okay.
That was a little bit strange. And I also have some audio of outside when we were waiting to go into the hospital.
Because there was another tour group before us.
There was another tour group before us. So we were just standing outside waiting patiently and I was chatting with one of the guys who was on our tour and my lapel mic picked up something. Anywhere I wanted them.
Yeah.
Which is, disappointing.
All right.
Mm.
Tell you a couple of things.
I can't tell you what that noise is. I've listened to it over and over and over again. You can hear the chatter in the background while we're talking. And you can tell, obviously that boy that I'm having the conversation with is a lot closer to me from the level of my voice on the mic and his voice on the mic, and you can then hear in the distance there's people talking behind us. That noise is very close.
Not a bird?
That bird would have had to fly past my microphone.
Good point.
I'm going to play it again so you can listen to my voice, his voice, background noise.
All right.
You're a producer.
Am I?
You listen, well, you spend all the time listening to our audio.
Yeah,
How
you're
do
right.
you
If it was a
explain
bird,
that?
it would be further away.
And it's not a, because I thought, is it a bat? Like, is it, because it's, is it a bat wing? But it's got a noise to it. It's not a laugh, but it's not a, like you would expect a bird wings or a bat noise or something. If something was flying past, it's got a to it. Yeah, a little bit strange.
All right.
That was a hospital. Then we headed to isolation. We didn't do a lot of investigating there. We just kind of stood outside. But again, when I went back through the audio, when we were walking from the isolation area up the hill, so there's a bit of puffing in here,
Big hill.
I hear a voice that wasn't there. It says, sorry, something.
How do you know that wasn't somebody near?
It could be. It could be. Maybe someone was just walking, because it sounds like to me it says, sorry, Simon. Maybe there was someone on our thing and he just walked past and said, sorry, Simon. But whoever's saying it is whispering.
And closer to you than Cos is.
So from isolation, we went up to Gravedigger's Cottage. We looked at the cemetery, which was right outside. So our accommodation was smack bang between the first and the second cemetery.
As we found out in the middle of the ghost tour.
As we found out in the middle of the ghost tour, our third class accommodation in the middle of the two cemeteries. Look where the poor people go, just right next to the dead ones. We had a little look at the cemetery and then we went into Gravedigger's Cottage.
Which is well known as the most haunted building at Q Station.
Yes. It was very hot. That was my initial thing. It was hotter than any other place we'd been into.
And our Ghostbusters things, what are they called?
EMFs.
Our EMFs were going off.
Were going off. Now, I had a temperature reader as well, and when we went into that building, it was 29, and I took it several times.
It was 39.
I took the temperature several times, but the air was dead. Like it was dead still. And everywhere we went, and I thought old colonial buildings, there'll be drafts and breezes and all. There was nothing anywhere. It was dead air. We went into the Gravedigger's Cottage and we all congregated in the front sitting room. So I'll give you a little breakdown. So just think colonial square cottage. You go through the front door, you're in the sitting room. To the right, there is a door that goes through to a bedroom. At the back of the sitting room, you go through another door, which takes you into a little kitchen area. To the right, there is another bedroom. Then you go through another door at the back of the little kitchen area, and that takes you to like a laundry and a sunroom, I think they called it, out the back. When we walked into that room, I was incredibly aware that I had my back to a doorway and I felt exceptionally uncomfortable about it. The whole time, she explained all of those stories in that front room. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, bad story. So there's a bad doctor that lived there.
Bad doctor, did experiments on kids. They believe there's some kids buried under the house.
And the GA, what did she call him? The maintenance person.
Are we talking about Samuel? Samuel could have been a gravedigger, sort of a roustabout, a GA like you were talking about, or a blacksmith was the things that she mentioned that night.
So he was asked to do things for the doctor, but they believe afterwards he showed remorse.
Yeah, so she talked about some paranormal investigators that had come in, and they said that Martin was a psychopath,
The doctor,
and Samuel tried to keep him under control. He was aware that what he was doing was wrong, and he tried to keep him under control. However, he did help him in some of these things. I didn't know at that stage that that front room was Martin's room and the back room was Samuel's room.
Let's be honest, Shannon, if that doctor liked to try experimenting on people, you think that he really would have been interested in looking inside of your head.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, he would have. So we went from that front room where we kind of stood around and listened, and the EMFs were going off. And then you and Cos just turned around and walked through, and we walked into what is known as Samuel's bedroom. I followed you guys into Samuel's room, where I felt completely welcome. I did not feel uncomfortable in that room at all. And there was a few of us in there, and we had a couple of very unusual experiences.
Use the energy in the room, Sam, and open the cupboard door.
So this, it's the stage.
Do you want us to stay in here? Would you like somebody to stay in here tonight with you? Do you want us to leave?
What does the thing say, Cos?
Oh, we lost him. Are you still here, Sam? Can you make the light go back up to red if you're still here?
He's gone. Bloody Sam.
Oh, he's over here,
Oh.
maybe. So when it goes up to red like that and it's on that constant red, see if you can feel anything. Does it feel any different? Do you feel any...
So that just went up from
tingling
23
or-
to 29.
What's that? Is that something different?
Temperature.
This is it. It just
Oh,
reads
right,
the temperature with a
yeah,
laser.
yeah.
Can you open the cupboard door? Or maybe
Oh
somebody
my goodness.
Holy
No
Jesus.
way, man. That is ridiculous.
Oh my god!
No way. Do you have a string? Or like what's going on?
No, I don't. And do you know what the good thing about that is? Nobody was standing there,
No,
so
no.
it wasn't the floorboards.
And the EMF's going off at
The
the same
EMF
time.
was going off.
Wild.
Hi, Sam. You freaking us out a little bit.
That door just opened by itself, like completely. No one was even there. That is wild.
You're only really cool.
Oh my goodness.
Well, that was good.
That was great.
Shut it. Where's that? Shut it.
Yeah, close. Yeah, I don't know if he can close it, but push it right in.
Oh, so it closes.
That must have been some power there to open that.
Yeah, it
Oh, was
takes
it
a
shut
lot of
like that?
energy. But yeah, it was.
It like literally just flinged open. Like ridiculous.
Can you do it one more time? Is he still here? Do we still have him on the EMFs?
Not currently.
Sam.
That is incredible.
Does it? If it takes them a lot of energy to do that, does it take them a while to?
To like re-go.
Sam's here. Open the
So,
door.
yeah.
When we communicate on the EMFs, we usually say give about 30 to 60 seconds to get a response.
Okay.
So that's using the EMF.
Maybe you got scared because a lot of people came in. Maybe just likes a smaller group.
Yeah, maybe. Sam, if you're still here, please can you let us know and open the cupboard door? Oh, you're still here. Can you open the cupboard door one more time?
Wow.
Thank you, Sam. Do you want us to leave you alone now? If you do, make the EMF go to red.
Thanks, Sam.
Yeah.
That was good. Good job. Megan's hurting my arm.
Like, close it.
I can't believe this is dark.
Close it, Sam.
So are we allowed to go close?
Yeah.
I want to see how.
No, I get it. No, honestly, close it. Takes a bit of
Looking for magic tricks.
I'm just looking for the button.
Yeah, that's fair.
I just want to see how stiff the door is.
it's stiff. Look.
Oh shit! Yeah, right. I'm gouty here.
That would have taken some power.
So
That was weird.
Yeah, but how?
yeah, but that pushed in. Do it again.
She is. She's there. She ain't coming loose.
After the Gravedigger's cottage, we headed back down the hill, so there's less puffing in the audio. And we went into the morgue.
Dude, the morgue was super creepy.
Yeah.
So there was a mannequin covered in a sheet
A sheet, yeah.
on the table as you first walked in. Very creepy.
Yeah, it was creepy. It was. I didn't feel great about Steve, and I knew Steve was plastic.
The blood was captured, like fell off the table and went into the drain, and the drain comes out at the first class beach. Apparently.
Yeah, that'd be good for the sharks.
Yeah, I didn't like the morgue.
No, the one thing I did find interesting about the morgue was that they generally only did one autopsy per ship. So if that person had scarlet fever, then anybody who died off that ship was just classed as having scarlet fever.
Yeah.
The morgue and like the original table is still there, and all the little grooves that take the juices to the first class beach. And then there's a little window, and the lab is on the other side. So as they would take the organs from the body, they'd be passed through to the lab, and then that person a lab tech, I don't know what they would have been called back then, would have done the scientific stuff to figure out what it was that person was suffering from at death. I was not at all scared of Mr. Slimy, who she talked about in that.
He's the one that liked the ladies.
Yeah, so they tell you a story about a ghost who they refer to as Mr. Slimy, who often touches women inappropriately.
He wasn't interested in me.
He wasn't. It's because she had jeans on.
Is that why? Thanks, Shan.
People have felt, their bums being grabbed or their bra straps being
Flicked open.
Yeah, there's some gross stuff. Here I am, like big brave, oh yeah, come on, let's go on a ghost tour. And I'm like, I'm putting jeans on because I don't want it to touch my legs. I don't know if I'm as tough as what I make out I am. But anyway, so that was the morgue. We were in there for a little while. There was nothing big or strange that happened in there. And then we headed back down to the wharf precinct where we went into the shower block. I hated it.
Yeah?
I hated that section. And I don't know if it was just because it was creepy. I could not wait to get out of there.
You did get out earlier than us.
Yeah. And I don't think I even told you. I was like, whatever this is in here, I do not feel okay. And I don't know whether that's just the ambience of it. It stank. The shower block is like a row of showers. So the people would be brought in after they'd been gassed, and they would go down the middle aisle, and there's probably, what do you reckon, 15 showers on either side?
Yeah.
Maybe even 20.
Yeah.
So it's a big, long building, and the people would be brought down the middle aisle. They would step into a dressing room on either side where they would take their clothes off. Then they would step into the next section, which was the shower section.
But it wasn't water.
It wasn't water. They used carbolic acid to wash them with, which would actually leave them with, like, they talked about it being like a sunburn.
Like they'd lost layers of skin.
Yeah, and over the next few days the skin would actually like peel off.
Yeah. And there were holes to the outside.
Yeah.
So guards would look in
Guards
and
would
make
watch.
sure that these women were actually
Cleaning
underneath
themselves. So you want to hope that those guards were good men.
Creepy.
Yeah, because
It was a creepy place.
it was yuck. And then they would step out on the outside, so they don't come back into the area where they come in. They then step out to a corridor, which is on the external wall of each side, and funnel down and out the back. So they never actually, once they're cleaned, they never step back on the parts of that they come in on when they were, before they'd been washed. So that part of it was interesting. I thought that was a good process for the
Contamination,
Yeah. But I felt yuck in there. I didn't see anything. I didn't experience anything. The EMFs were going off and I kept putting them up because the showers are like metal and tin. It's not like a nice tile shower area. It's pretty primitive.
So EMFs respond to
electromagnetic fields.
Oh, that's what EMF stands for, everybody. I learned a little bit about this. It's not just the Ghostbusters device.
Yeah. They can be set off by things. So I then took the EMF and was putting it up against the tin and the metal and stuff to see the readings that we were getting, because when Cos was standing in the middle and we gave our most sensible person the EMF because we knew that she wasn't going to try and rig it by putting her phone near it or setting it off at sporadic times when it would suit the story, it was going berserk while we were standing there in that middle section. And we did get readings in each of the shower things when I put it in there, but it wasn't going up to red, not like it was when she was standing in that middle bit. I did not like that space at all.
You didn't like it at the beginning of the day though.
No, and I can't tell you why.
Yeah.
I didn't feel terrified while I was standing in there.
Yeah.
Whatever the vibe was of that place felt dark to me. I didn't like it. Yeah.
Now, our walk down to the shower block?
Oh, yes. So as we were walking down to the shower block, we come down like this cute little pathway that sort of comes through the bush. And it was quite well lit. There was some little lights along the edge. I can see right down to the wharf, to the beach, because we're on a very steep incline as we come down. And I noticed it in my peripheral vision and I turned to look and
You got to learn not to do that.
Yeah, it was the same little girl who was in the autoclave with the pink pinafore dress on. I got a much better look at her this time, although it was only for a couple of seconds because once I turn and look at her directly, I can't see her. It was the little girl who has dark, scraggly hair about shoulder length, and she looked very excited that I could see her. She wasn't scary. She seemed mischievous is the best way that I could explain her, and her dress was pink. It was not white. It was not Marianne. And so I don't know who she is. Megan. That little girl's there. That little girl's there. Up there. Yep. Just like. No, she's littler. She's not Marianne. Just like literally fucking right there. Okay, so whoever I've seen in there she's not Marianne.
Saw her in there. The person you saw in there.
It's the same person and it's a pink dress.
Is she still there?
No. And
With all your swearing.
I don't think she's old-timey. Huh? I don't think she's old-timey. Like, she doesn't look like that era. I didn't share it at the time because I feel like an idiot. And Megan said, why don't you tell her about it? And I said, because I feel like an idiot. Like, because I'm literally explaining to someone, I can see this thing out of my peripheral vision, but I can't see it when I look at it. So I feel stupid and I feel embarrassed and I feel like people will judge me. And I feel stupid explaining it on a podcast because I've also done an episode of this podcast where I talk about my mental health issues. And when you can have a doctor's certificate that says you're crazy and then you tell people that you once seen a dead person, I'm really scared of the judgment that comes from that.
Can I tell you what my perspective is?
Yeah.
I've already explained a few times about how I'm open to believing, but I've not seen any proof yet. You are my proof. I completely trust you. And that's the thing that freaked me out. None of the ghost stuff, except for the cupboard door maybe. But this person that I wholeheartedly trust and I know doesn't make stuff up is telling me she saw something. So there must be something there.
Thank you, Megan. Thank you for believing me.
When people I trust say that they've seen or had these paranormal experiences, that's the thing that makes me keep going, well, there must be something. There must be something.
Yeah. And I even questioned it. I thought about it afterwards, and then we went back to the room, and even when we came out of the autoclave to start off with, and I was saying to you, oh, maybe it was the girl in the white dress, but the light was red. So I'm trying to disprove it in my head. So clearly still I don't fully believe either. And even when we had the experience in Samuel's room, I was like, is it set off by the people walking behind the cupboard? I'm looking for ways to disprove it. I was the first person to run my hand along the inside of that wardrobe and see if there was a latch on the inside that could have been clicked with a magnet or something. There wasn't.
It is post-ghost tour, the morning after, and we are sitting around on the bed with our handheld mic. It's not supposed to be handheld, so if the audio is not as good as what you're used to, that's because we're fighting over the talking stick.
Our tour guide was great. She didn't amp anything up. There was no jump scare stuff. It wasn't theatrical. I really liked all of that part of it. If you could just have 5 minutes to just sit in a space and see what you pick up on before anyone starts to tell you what they or somebody else has experienced in that space, I think that would be the thing that would make a really big difference.
I am probably on the bit more of the skeptic side at the moment, because I didn't really see anything last night that I didn't think could not be explained some other way. Maybe I'm just not open to it enough to see things. I'm not sure. Like Shannon said, I would have liked more time just to sit quietly in the room and take it all in, which the first 2 rooms we did get to. But then the rest was, as the tour went on, obviously time was getting on and you had to keep moving on, and possibly being part of that bigger group as well to get everybody through. The incidents in the gravedigger's cottage, I feel that cupboard could have come open just because there was other people moving around in the building, and the people walking down the hallway behind where the cupboard was sitting, that could have caused the door to come open. I don't know how EMFs work. I tested that machine in a lot of different ways as to, because your phone can set it off and things like that, and that's why I put my phone on airplane mode so that wouldn't happen. That's why I was carrying it. I did find that my torch was also setting it off, so I had to make sure I had it in the other hand, and I made sure I carried it in the hand that my watch wasn't on as well, to try and make sure there was nothing that could set it off. Yes, there was lots of incidences where it was either green and there was nothing there, or it would be going nuts and up to red all the time. That I can't explain, but I'm going to do some hard Googling to see how those machines work, to see whether there can be like a little remote control that the lady could have been, like she was carrying her little bag around. What's in the little bag?
I was wondering what was in the bag.
What's in the bag? So I'm very curious about that part of it. I still want to see if I can see a ghost somewhere at some time. So I may come on another one with you, Shannon, one day. Just because I want to see if there is something out there, but maybe I'm not open enough to it because the skeptic in me just keeps coming out going, I don't know. There's still the scientific and the logical keeps coming back to the forefront. There were definitely creepy rooms. I did find the gravedigger's cottage the creepiest, but is that just because there was no light in there at all? That felt weird, and I sort of put myself so I could have the wall behind my back because I had 2 open doorways either side. Definitely a healthy curiosity. Still there.
The thing with the EMFs that really got me in the shower blocks, it was going mental, but the corridor down the middle of those cubicles is about as wide as the cubicles itself. So if it's going to be set off by the metal, you would think you would get a reading absolutely everywhere in that building. But it did seem to be more active in the cubicles than what it was in the corridor. But there was that one spot in Gravedigger's Cottage where they had pointed it towards the same spot and they were both going right to red, and then they would move them away from that spot and they would stop. But there was nothing in that room. It was just in the center of the group of people. So
Could one EMF set another EMF off?
no, because the EMF had already started going off before they were. They were pointed at the same space.
Well, I have to say, it was just an incredible experience. Playing Ghostbusters with you was so fun. And it literally felt like Ghostbusters when you first got that EMF. And I was like, I didn't even know what that was. And I do have some questions about paranormal testing. EMF, sure, you're going to go home and research it, aren't you, Cos? But also they've talked about doing further paranormal testing recently, and they're still doing that around here. What does that involve?
So generally when people do paranormal investigations, they will use tools. So she mentioned spirit boxes last night, which is a radio frequency run backwards. So all you get is static, I think, when you listen to it, but it can pick up words on that frequency. So it'll just run in the background going, and then someone might say cow or dog or get out, which is a little bit scarier than cow or dog, but it can say anything. So I've done some where there's been spirit boxes. They will sometimes ask questions and run the spirit box through a set of noise cancelling headphones, so the person listening to the static can't hear what the people in the room are saying. All they've got is that static noise in their ear, and then any words that come through, that person then says what the word is, but the people in the room are asking questions. So that tends to be a good test to line it up, because if the words are just random, then it's not really interacting, it's just words. What I'll do is find some of these paranormal tools that they use, and I'll link it in the show notes and videos where there's been paranormal investigations. I've done a couple with Anne and Renita, so I might link some of their stuff because I really trust those girls. There's a lot of different levels, I think, of paranormal investigation, and I think some people do it because they're genuinely interested in the spirits. Some people do it because it's a really great way to make money. I trust Anne and Renita and their work. It is great if you do a paranormal investigation and you have a psychic or a medium that's with you, because they can often confirm things that are coming through.
The cupboard thing, that freaked me out for sure.
The look on your face was mad.
For sure.
Incredibly freaked out in the grip you had on my arm.
Sorry about that. But then you overthink things and talk to other people who may be skeptical, and you start to talk yourself out of it.
How did you feel when you shut that door and it closed?
I didn't do the shutting. Somebody else
okay.
did, but I could hear it. I could hear it jam in there. I know.
That's what I wanted you to be open to, that perception, like you were saying, about feeling like you need to step aside because there's someone trying to get through and you're blocking their way. That happens to us all the time, where there are actually people behind us in the supermarket and they're moving faster, and our perception will tell us to get out of the way. They're the things that you need to pay attention to when you're doing this type of stuff. And I think that's the disappointing part for me in this experience, is that there wasn't a lot of time to do that, where it was just quiet and you could pay attention. I really think I like ghost tours because it requires me to be present and mindful and in my own body and really paying attention to my senses and my perception. The more practice you do, the better you'll get at it. And like you were mentioning before, that rationale of I've seen this thing, now I'm trying to explain it away. That cupboard door has opened, we've had this really strange experience, now I'm trying to explain it away. It's the same thing when you see something, your brain is conditioned to believe that that thing you're looking at is not real. So you explain it away. I thought going on the latest tour would be the best idea, but I don't know about that now. Because if there was 3 tours last night, so there was the young kids tour, and then there was the group, there was an 8:30 tour, and then there was us. That's a lot of people going through buildings. And I would assume if spirits use energy, that their energy depletes.
To be able to be there just on your own and, yes, maybe not go in the building. I'm probably a bit too scaredy cat for that. But just sit on the gravedigger's little veranda out the front and see if you experience anything there without the tour guide giving you history, giving you background. Just be able to sit there yourself and see if you experience anything for yourself. I would be curious to do.
You're not really a skeptic then. If you think that you're going to be too scared to go in the building by yourself, then you are expecting something to be in there.
I'm on the fence. I'm skeptical but I'm also would be terrified to sit there by myself. I'll take Shannon with me. She'll protect me.
You're the support person.
No, terrible support person. Bad choice.
You can book a paranormal investigation at Q Station, and now that's on my list. I would like to go back in those spaces with small groups of people where they're not telling you about people's experiences and stuff, which there is a whole demographic of people who want that. And I feel a little bit judgmental now, which I've mentioned, because I was cynical of that. But I have to remember what we were doing there. You know, like it wasn't a paranormal investigation. I want to go back and do that now.
If we did, and we happened to make an episode 2 to this, it would be incredible if we had some stories of other people who have been to Q Station. So can we do a little bit of a shout out to anyone who maybe has had a paranormal, or even if it's not paranormal, anything that's a little bit unique, any Q Station stories for us to put together to bring that in, because we'd love to hear from our listeners who have been to visit.
It would be great.
What a unique and wonderful birthday present. Super grateful for the whole experience, for the cute little AI voucher that you gave me to a girls' weekend away and spoiling me there and introducing me to this paranormal world that I haven't had much experience in, but I feel like there may be a lot more. And now the reflection piece at the end, it's just been a really wonderful journey, and I want to say thank you to you.
It far exceeded all of my expectations.
Shout out to Cos too. Great
Thanks,
support
Cos.
person.
I had a fabulous time. You girls are the best.
You too. Catch you next time.
Bye.
Thank you for joining us for today's episode of If These Trees Could Talk. If you would like to access more about the places or information included in today's topic, please visit our website, ifthesetreescouldtalk.com.au. If you would like to follow us on our adventures, check us out on Facebook or Insta. Our creative writer is Shannon Walters, and our podcast is produced at Bellevue Studio in the Hunter Valley with audio production by Megan Anderson. We love to hear your feedback, so please rate and review, and if you would like to hear more, please subscribe. We look forward to you joining us for our next adventure.